Welcome back to Canopy's Practice Success podcast. Today, we're talking with Ben Richmond, Xero's U.S. Country Manager, about using tech to overcome limitations, the benefits of the cloud, and how tapping into your network is a great way to learn new things. Welcome to an episode of Canopy Practice Success. I'm Casey Brothers, and I am here with Ben Richmond from Xero. Ben, will you tell us a little bit about yourself and give a little professional introduction as well as maybe some personal highlights as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Yes, I'm the country manager for Xero here in the USA. I've been with Xero for about 10 and a half years, so six up here, based in Denver, Colorado. And the first four was leading growth down in our New Zealand market where we founded the business from. So originally from the Deep South, hence the accent.
The Deep South.
The Deep South, yeah.
Okay.
So my career kicked off was chartered accountant. So I was still a chartered accountant, did 5 years in public practice. And then spent some time in telco. It was a big corporate telco, which was exciting because it was US listed. And then found Xero about 10 and a half years ago. So it was pretty early. Xero was founded and born in the cloud back in 2006. And so jumped across, we had just about a couple of hundred people at that point. Just had gone over 100,000 customers. And so it's been a pretty fun, exciting ride, both, everything that every sort of cloud startup goes through in those early days, having to explain the name. People mistake you for working for a photocopier company. Back then it was explaining the cloud and would accounting go into the cloud. So it was pretty awesome taking the New Zealand market through to mass market adoption, obviously building out our accounting and bookkeeping channel, which is our sort of core way we go to market. And then jumping up here 6.5 years ago. So it feels like going through the same, cloud adoption in that part of the world is much more advanced than just here when you look at the amount of small businesses running their GLs on the cloud. It's over 50% now. In Australia and New Zealand. Up here in the US, it's still hovering around 20%. So still a long way to go. So it's like going through the same movie, just a much bigger movie. So yeah, and more complex.
So why, this is something I have approached in conversations inside Canopy, even like through our copy to accountants, is why the cloud is important. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's kind of, there's still a lot of people that haven't made that jump. I think actually number one is security for me. I think, they're running in, when you look at the vendors that you're running in the cloud, I've always said to people right from the beginning, we're all comfortable with online banking. This is online accounting or online practice management with banking grade security around it. And so I think for a lot of, it was the biggest challenge when the cloud first kicked off. I think most people now realize that they're, again, with the checking with your vendors around how they're using data and what their data principles are, making sure the way in which they're storing your data is got the right levels of security around it. Then in that case, it's more secure than the laptop on the back seat of your car. If I think about the practice I worked in, all our servers sat for our practice management in a filing room, and we would do backup tapes every day that someone, when you were a junior in the firm, someone would have to run to the local bank to put the backup tapes into the bank's vault overnight, which is kind of great. But if you think about where we were, the bank was like 4 blocks away, and we lived in a city that was on a fault line. So if there was an earthquake, that server was going down, and so was the bank's vault. So I think business continuity, security is critical. And I think the way in which we work in these days, so if you think about the labor shortage, being able to set up your practice so that you can run from anywhere at any time is just so important.
And get the talent you need.
Totally, yeah. And that may not be in the building that you've got downtown, which has been what people have experienced traditionally. I think many firms in the pandemic experienced that, right? When we suddenly had to go and lock ourselves in our basements for a period of time. Most firms didn't even have laptops that they could give to their people. And so firms are rapidly trying to work out how do we actually operate the practice remotely, get ready for a tax season, all those sorts of things. And, firms that were running in the cloud remotely were just able to immediately embrace it and then focus on supporting their clients really quickly. So business continuity, I think security is actually one of the key reasons why you want to do it. And just the data friction that gets removed of being in the cloud means that you're just getting to whether it be accounting software or practice management, all of that stuff is just automated. The tedious stuff that we used to spend time, whether it be billing for the practice, whether it be coding a client's bank statements, all that stuff's automatically happening now. The systems are doing a much better job at doing that. So you're spending more time with these cloud systems looking at actually how the business is performing. There's just to me, it's table stakes. And when you look at the next phase of technology coming down the pipe, if you're still sitting in desktop or a whole sort of confectionery mix of different systems that aren't talking, you're going to find it really hard to be efficient and to be competitive.
Yeah, you're going to end up doing business more than working on the business.
Correct.
And working on the business kind of work is what projects you forward, upward, saves you time, gets you to greater efficiency, more the kind of work you're wanting to do, maybe even like identifying the clients you're wanting to work with, so on and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah, I think too, like time is our greatest asset, particularly in a profession that's we're traditionally been time-based billing. And yeah, I always said these systems and operating like this is going to give you time back, and then you choose what you want to use with that time.
Yeah.
Right. And so for some practices, it's I want to take on more clients, I want to grow. For other practices, it's actually I'm not having a sustainable life right now as it is. So for me, that time is I can actually go and work from my lake house on a Friday because I had the flexibility to do that, or I want to have the weekends back properly. So time is the greatest thing that's going to save you, and then you choose what you want to do with that time.
Well, another thing I've seen a lot of accountants do to help gain back time is outsourcing talent, whether that's locally. I mean, we talked about that just by the nature of having the cloud, that, you're not limited to talent within a certain radius of an office. But you're also not limited in terms of like overseas as well. Or even market opportunity and serving people who might be living overseas. I'd love to hear your thoughts around how accountants can manage outsourcing, or even how, whichever one of these is more appealing to you, how they can take or identify opportunities internationally.
Firstly, accounting has become truly global. And so I think even if you look at the States, right, people tended to look after clients within the state they operated in. So now it's not that hard to look after clients right across the States. We see many Xero partners that are operating internationally. So, and actually one of the great things is a lot of co-opetition in the profession as well. So I met a firm out of Atlanta that works closely with a firm in Australia and the UK that often has subsidiary companies operating here in the US.
Yeah.
And so they partner up around their clients that have international, different international subsidiaries and work together. So we're seeing in our XeroCons that we have annually, we have firms travel into the US from all around the world. When we had them in Australia, we've got the Australian one coming up in August with over 4,000 people going to it. And there'll be firms from all around the world that will come to that as well. So it's truly turning into this global community, which is awesome. And small businesses becoming more global, which is, it's kind of weird because the political situation globally, everyone seems to be pulling into being more national focused, whereas the actual business community is still operating more global because of technology, which is probably a good thing. Outsourcing to me, is just a no-brainer. I think there's that emotional heartstring it pulls on of, if I outsource, am I taking American jobs and offshoring them? To me, that's kind of rubbish. It's the reality is there's, I think right now, for every one accounting job that's open, for every two accounting jobs that are open, there's only one person.
Well, and even people who are graduating with a degree in accounting aren't that is down, but they're also not necessarily taking jobs in accounting. They might be a data analyst.
Yeah. So I think it's funny. We work with lots of firms, and building on CAS services, client advisory services, which is taking on more the bookkeeping and building on advisory. Everyone wants to do that, but everyone's struggling with the capacity of just getting through these tax seasons. I've worked with firms in New Zealand and Australia and the US over 11 years that have gone through. I've worked with big practices that have outsourced big chunks of their compliance work. Not one of them I saw go through any mass layoffs of staff through doing that. Actually, what it did was it took the sort of I mean, I started accounting. I didn't go into accounting because I was really pumped about reconciling bank accounts and checking and tying data, right? So if you can outsource that work, the work that's left for the practice is the higher value work. It's the more engaging work as well, and so it actually creates that higher engaging work for your people. And there's so much more opportunity of things we can do for our clients that we can't get to. We do a lot of research with small business, and their accountant sort of disappears for 2 to 3 months of the year because they're swamped on tax.
Yeah.
And so if they're needing help on
When
growth,
there's still other financial needs, yeah.
Yeah, could you imagine if your doctor just for 3 months of the year couldn't see you? So I think it's if we can use technology to smooth the workflows, use outsourcing where it makes sense, and that way we're actually going to create higher engaging jobs in the country and free up our accounting firms to do more for small business.
Tell us more about what Xero is doing right now. Any new and exciting things in that space, and how you would approach or how businesses might approach the change that would come with some of these things.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're about 16 years old now. We're over 3.5 million customers. We operate in New Zealand, Australia, the UK, Canada, the US, South Africa, and Asia. And we've got clients now in about 180 countries around the world. So it's been a pretty exciting ride. We're born in the cloud.
Yeah.
We were founded by basically it was a tech entrepreneur who was working with his accountant back in Wellington, New Zealand, and he was traveling the world. And every time they need to do tax, it was sort of, can you send me your stuff? Or I need a shareholder report. There was this friction of sending stuff backwards and forth. And so that's how we sort of kicked the vision off for Xero, which was a single source of truth in the cloud that small businesses could operate on. We could take a design first approach to accounting software. So in the past, accounting software had been coded and then skinned, and so most accounting software did not look fun to deal with. And so we took a design-led approach to building the general ledger and the bookkeeping software that small businesses use. And then from that sort of single source of truth, we built out an ecosystem of over 1,200 apps. And those apps include everything for apps that our partners can use to run their practice, apps for specific industries. Whether if you're a farmer, now you can run a farm management software that's integrated with Xero, and that software is also integrated with the John Deere software on farm. That's actually, so if you think you're connecting, you got a tractor going along, getting production data that's feeding it into the industry specific software that's valuing it off live grain prices, which is then updating the accounting software, which is connected to the bank. So, really truly connecting up these ecosystems so that you get a true view of how the business is running.
Yeah.
So it's exciting for us. North America is a big growth market for us. Obviously, we're the leaders in Australia, New Zealand, and leading in the UK. And then we're the challenger here in the market. Our big focus really is, we truly believe in the power of the accountant and bookkeeper in the equation. So one of the things I said yesterday at the conference was small business survival rates in the US are about 50% in the first 5 years. Our data shows if you're using great technology like Xero, with the advisor regularly engaged in the software and the client, that survival rate lifts to 85%. And so, we can all build great technology, but it's actually what the advisors do with it, working with small business. And so our big focus right now is obviously we've a lot of work in the AI space around, and we've done a lot of the stuff around how we coding transactions, because obviously no one enjoys coding transactions. So the system now is suggesting a lot of where things should be coded. Our vision is to get to a world of almost code-free accounting where, you're only coding by exception. So that business owners and their advisors can get much more faster to what is my actual software telling me? So what are the insights around historically people spent more time doing accounting or bookkeeping in the software versus having any time to look at what is, how is the business actually performing?
Yeah.
And then we've done things like our cash flow and analytics dashboards, which start to look out and suggest to the business, hey, this is how things are looking from a cash flow perspective in the next 30, 60, 90 days. Here are some levers that you should think about pulling. So we're pretty passionate about helping accountants solve their workflows and make their practices more efficient, help them be much more connected to the client.
Yeah.
Because our view is if you give accountants time and capacity and you make them much more connected to the small business, they'll use that connection and time to do more of the advisory work, which they haven't historically had the time to do. In the US, we've got a lot of stuff going on. So, lot of stuff in the bank feed space. So we've just built out a bank statement extraction tool for some of those. If you think about those regional banks that you can't often get a good bank feed from, where our system will OCR recognize that to bring the transaction in to Xero, where a bank may not have a direct bank feed. We're doing a massive upgrade to our sales tax experience powered by Avalara. So, and then we acquired a business called Locate out of California last year. I think the team there are like some of the leading minds on inventory and e-commerce inventory for small business. So we'll be launching that at our roadshows coming up in July and August. That is, a big step forward for our inventory product in core Xero, particularly in the e-commerce space. So lots of new product coming out, lots of new product for the US. Probably the biggest thing that's been the most exciting for the last 2 years has been the reporting.
Yeah.
So, we build firms the ability to do all their report templates that they use for either management reporting or Schedule C reporting or gap reporting with their clients that connects onto so they can easily run, if I've got 100 real estate clients, if they've all got different charts of accounts, we map those all to a common set of report codes.
Yeah.
So they're able to build one template for the firm for real estate clients, then roll that across a whole lot. And so a lot of US specific reporting is being built. So lots of product coming. And of course we have teams on the ground across the US. So we pride ourselves in showing up to our partners. So we're all, building the Xero community of partners is a big focus for us. So.
Lots of my brain is reeling with thoughts in response to everything that you just said. Talking about SMB and enabling people to survive and to remain as a business, and how accountants are a huge part of that, and the services that they can provide through Xero, as well as the ecosystems. And wow.
Yeah, it's kind of exciting. Actually, we talked before about the number of grads coming out of the accounting profession is dropping, and the number that are going into accounting jobs. I do think we need to do a better job at rebranding what the profession is now, because
it's not what it used to be.
You meet some of the partners here, and that it's the type of work they can do, and I think a lot of them still don't realize the actual role they play in helping a small business, because they're out there doing it on their own. They didn't go into small business because they're an expert in accounting. And having someone that can work with them alongside them, if people are not feeling in control and confident, they are scared of growth. No one wants to take on a punt or invest more money and try and grow their business if they're already feeling underwater and nervous. And so I think partners and the profession can play a massive role in helping really get a small business, help them get things under control, and help them navigate tough times, but also help them capitalize on growth. And so I think there's the profession is the number one trusted advisor to small business. My challenge is I don't think we fully capitalize on that. And so there's just so much more we can do.
And depending on, who the accountant is, their context within their firm, they could likely really relate to their customers in that, hey, I have this knowledge, these soft skills that help me do this thing, provide this value to the world, but my business acumen, not so high. But as you work through that and you push through those barriers, you then are able to not just provide accounting knowledge, but business acumen knowledge to your small business clients to help them work through and push through some of these challenges, or to avoid some altogether.
Totally. And it's where I think the practice management thing comes in. I've challenged a lot of firms historically on, firms that want to grow into advisory, which means, to your point, there's more soft skills that come with that. It's not like following a job process checklist of doing a tax return. You've got to get to know your clients. There'll be personal elements to their goals and intentions around them achieving what they're trying to achieve. So you've got a lot more questioning. There's a lot more subjectivity in it. And so there's upskilling that's required. The biggest thing I say to a lot of firms, and I see a lot of firms that aren't doing this stuff on themselves. So my big challenge is, it's actually a New Zealand saying, but like you've got to eat your own dog food. So if you're out there saying, hey, I want to be an advisor, and I'm going to help businesses understand their strategy and how they're going to track lead and lag indicators to that strategy, and regularly be alongside them coaching for growth. If you're not doing that on your own practice, that's a good place to start first. And that's where I think practice management comes into it. Like, are you using practice management in the right way? Are you thinking about your firm's strategy, the key pillars of that, how you track success on that. And are you using those tools to help measure that you're being successful and make pivots as needed? Because if you're not, that's doing advisory on yourself.
Yeah, and it's a less prescribed method of work.
Yeah.
Where like you might have clear steps when dealing with a 1099, but no one's necessarily giving you that kind of an outline that you get with tax forms for advisory work that you would manage within a practice management solution, and finding the time to slow down to then speed up and benefit your future self, and assessing how do I want to manage these aspects of my practice? How can I record them, templatize them, outline them, and democratize that information within a system so that anybody working from anywhere utilizing the cloud can still perform adequately, reliably, productively for your firm in those business efforts. Yeah,
and it's getting better. I think it's historically most the partner level of the firm, particularly in the bigger firms, a lot of the client interaction happened at the partner level. And I think if you're really going to run an advisory practice, you need to open up that client, particularly in the business development and advisory space.
Yeah.
Drop that down to the next levels in your firm. Like if you're the bottleneck that needs to meet every client, that doesn't scale. And so you need to create that sort of framework, to your point, democratizing the whole process so that, and that's what, again, it creates more fulfilling, engaging work for your teams than just being stuck in the back of the office processing data. So yeah, I think it's exciting. I mean, we've watched so many firms go through it. I think my last piece of advice for firms on that is, we all go to these conferences. There's lots of thought leaders out there in the US, and it's sort of like everyone's trying to out-innovate everyone. So, I was at Engage a couple of years ago, and this partner came up to me, had just walked out of the blockchain session. Brain was totally fried, was terrified of like, how do I prepare for this? And I asked him about his practice, and it was 95% on desktop. And so I think there's this whole, we're talking about blockchain and crypto and chat GPT, and we like to sort of, but actually most of the profession is still stuck on desktop. And so we're making if we make the quantum leap seem too far, none of them are going to make it. And so what we've tried to do is actually break it down into steps. And so I coach practices to go, let's just focus on your practice as it is today and think about as you digitize it and use cloud tools, that is the first step to building most of the efficiency. So you can build, that will create two things: a lot more efficiency in the work you're doing today. And it's not scary because you're doing the same work. It'll create a lot of more connectedness to your client that you haven't had before. And then as we think about advisory, well, let's break that into two steps: simple advisory and complex advisory. Simple advisory is more regular interaction with the client, doing tax planning, doing budgeting and forecasting, using some of the dashboarding tools that are out there. That's stuff that's not scary to accountants. We've all done that for decades. We've just never been able to do it at scale because we had to use Excel and could only do it on our big clients. And so, practice efficiency first. That allows you to step into the simple advisory. We did some research 3 years ago across firms across North America, and 65% of the revenue uplift from doing advisory services was just in that simple bucket. Now, so once you've nailed that, then you can work out, okay, do we want to go into complex advisory? And to me, complex advisory is where you're picking things like, let's pick a vertical niche and go deep on that. Let's start doing more education and managed services around maybe building out ecosystem stacks for small business vertical types. Is it startup mentoring or capital raising assistance? So sort of breaking it down. But what I find is the profession just gets bombarded with all this futuristic stuff, and they come away without actually what's the first step they need to take to actually get going.
Yeah, the barrier to entry, of that change just seems way too high, too complex, and unapproachable.
Yeah, we're trying to. We're literally saying, hey, you should be flying to the moon, and they haven't figured out how to put wheels on a suitcase yet. So we just sort of take, and because I think there's a massive opportunity for the mass market of the profession, and so all of our role is how do we work together to take the profession on this journey that's step by step and get them going. Versus if it gets too terrifying, then people just don't make that step. I mean, my favorite story was working with a 70-year-old partner who was splitting with the other partner that he worked with in the firm. And so he was looking for cloud practice management. He was looking for cloud GL. He was going to just maybe do another year before retiring. He was forced into a compelling event because the practice management server-based thing he was with, if you changed the firm structure, you had to buy separate licenses, which is quite expensive. So he decided, maybe I go cloud, I'll be able to sell the firm for more if it's cloud in a year's time. He went through all that change, and then, I was actually went back to New Zealand, would have been 4 years ago, and this is like 5 years since he did that. He's growing his practice. He works from the beach house 3 days a week. His teams all work remote. They meet in a cafe in Auckland on a Monday morning. And so he said, I just was going to retire, but we got on these tools. The interaction with clients became more fun. Our teams had a great time. We started growing, and I could balance. Work-life balance is sort of this old notion of, start work at 8:30, finish at 5. Sort of really work-life integration in the technology world. So he's like, I could leave the office for a few hours on a Thursday, and he said I just had this freedom to run the practice, but also live a life through it. And so yeah, he's 5 years still going, and is not talking about retirement because he's just having so much fun, and he's also doing the things he wants to do with his family. So yeah, that there's a big chunk of the profession that is, with the succession challenge coming. But my advice to them is two things. One, like still embrace technology, because you're actually protecting the asset you have to sell. Like, we're already seeing it out there for firms. If firms that are still very traditional in nature in the technology stacks and services are starting to sell well below the dollar for the sort of metric of $1 for $1 of fees. They're starting to sell in the 70 to 80 cent range, whereas firms that have made the technology transition and are running with this more efficiency are starting to get up to $1.20, $30, and $1.40. So even if you're thinking about, hey, I've got 2 years left in me, I don't want to rock the boat. Actually making that change is going to help make the asset.
Rocking the boat is what you need to do.
Yeah, making the asset that you built over decades that you want to sell and have a great retirement of. You got to make sure that's can sell for a premium.
Yeah, well, so it sounds like there's plenty of opportunity and exciting things, whether it's getting into the cloud or if you're in the cloud, working more flexibly, identifying the customers, getting more niche, whatever it might be. But there's lots going on that no matter where you're at, like, you can take risks in a safe way, because there's just so many good things out there that your return on investment's gonna outpace that risk.
Totally. And there's always a bit of change pain, but nothing comes easy that's worth it. And and the other exciting thing, and this is my sort of people coming out of university going into firms, the barriers to entry to starting an accounting firm are pretty much nothing like what they used to be. Like, you don't need a server, you don't need a fancy office or a boardroom, nice laptop and a car and the right cloud tools, and you can run an accounting firm. And look, most of our clients don't, if you talk about the average small business client, are they really impressed by the fact I'm wearing a suit and tie and I'm sitting in a fancy boardroom that they've had to drive and pay expensive parking to see me?
And leave their business or leave their family, when they can more conveniently take a video conference call from the back room.
Totally. Or us go and see them at their place of work.
Yeah.
So no, I think it's exciting. I think the profession is, soft skills are more important than ever.
Yeah.
I think, it's good to see the CPA exams that are now building much more education and sort of knowledge around technology. But I think we've got a long way to go around making sure we're educating people on soft skills, because to be an advisor, it's emotional intelligence is the biggest thing.
Yes.
And we're still not really teaching emotional. I don't think we're teaching emotional intelligence and how to manage and thrive in that environment to accounting grads, because those soft skills are critical if you're going to be an advisor.
It's an exciting time to be an accountant.
It is, yeah.
Thanks, Ben.
Awesome, thank you.